Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's our pleasure to be able to be presenting here today and being able to share details of the 3D activities that we've been undertaking at Nottingham. In our presentation, we'll cover a bit about 3D models in general, our journey and the approach we've taken. We'll cover how we're using 3D to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of our planning processes. Then I give a demonstration of our operational 3D application and highlight some of the workflow processes. And lastly, just outline some of our next steps and aspirations for the future. 3D models have been around for an extremely long time. It's not hard to imagine that physical models or 3D city models being used thousands of years ago to aid ancient Greek and Roman planners and architects. Maybe something similar to, you can see on the screen, the incredible city replica of ancient Rome at the Museum of Roman Civilization, or the more modern model at the New London Architecture, which is definitely definitely recommend a visit if you have time while you're in London. Before Nottingham became so immersed within the digital world, we used to construct building and site models out of things like wood and cardboard, even polystyrene. But due to the time constraints and costs associated with this practice, it slowly died out. Sadly, I don't have any pictures of our physical modelling work, but the one on the left is a great example we recently received from a developer in relation to a major planning scheme. I really like in this one how you can now, with more modern models, interchange building proposals. Another lovely example I stumbled across in York, made of bronze, demonstrates a novel tourist value of physical models. Now, I know we're in the digital age, but I personally feel there is something incredibly unique and engaging about physical models. And with 3D printing becoming more common and less costly, I think they're starting to make a comeback. The relevance of this will become more apparent during the last part of our presentation. Okay, so digital models. I was surprised to discover that the first 3D digital software was developed almost 60 years ago by Ivan Sutherland. This was around the same time as the first digital GIS was developed by Roger Tomlinson. I think it's really interesting that these two approaches were born at the same time, and today we're seeing increasing collaboration between their children, Autodesk and Esri, to bring about the complementary capabilities that CAD and GIS have. Laura will highlight the fusion of GIS and CAD data during the demonstration. Our digital journey at Nottingham started, unbelievably, 2 decades ago. We started off by using 3D to produce visualisations like the one shown on the screen. These examples were used to support activities like strategic planning or transport. This eventually led to increased business demand from our planners, which utilised 3D as part of something known as the pre-application advice service for major planning schemes. Over the years, we used a variety of 3D modelling software and design software to undertake this work. But as demand increased to conduct assessments in 3D and facilitate the discussions between our planners and developers and local representatives, the delivery mechanism via a single PC became problematic and limited our support capability, and crazily required our designer at the time to carry a PC from meeting to meeting. So this is when we first started to explore the potential of 3D Scene and AGLE to support this function and to widen access. At the time, about 6 years ago, the ability to deliver something called LOD3 data at city scale was hampered by performance constraints. But we didn't give up. We developed a number of lightweight 3D applications, one to showcase strategic development sites and one to promote the caves underneath Nottingham streets. We also embedded 3D within an Esri story map to support a major consultation exercise. These were all extremely well received at the time and gave us even more encouragement to pursue the Esri approach in relation to 3D. It was great timing when Esri UK ran their planning pilot last year. It gave us the perfect opportunity to build upon previous successes and pursue our other objectives. It also provided us with a more solid foundations which to exploit other 3D opportunities. To maximise the time available, we took a shared learning approach with Esri and looked at 3 key areas. The first one was to be able to test Esri's infrastructure, AGLE and Enterprise, to be able to deliver 3D detailed data at city scale. Secondly, we looked at data manipulation techniques and how we could split up LOD3 data into discrete buildings and the possibility of generating LOD2 data using readily available data sources. And lastly, we developed additional coding knowledge to enhance the functionality that you would find in a standard 3D scene environment. So before I hand over to Laura, I just wanted to quickly highlight the data we used. Our 3D data framework is structured around something called semantic or a surface model. Basically, this is basically 3D objects made up of lots of polygons, which you're all familiar with. When we talk about surface models, the complexity or the simplicity of them is usually described as something called a LOD value, which I've previously mentioned. This is a level of detail. So LOD3, which you've probably all seen, or you've definitely seen this morning, is the most simplest and easiest to generate from things like master map and building heights. LOD3 is what forms the core of our city model and is usually derived commercially. LOD2 is a halfway house, and it's something we're actively trying to pursue with Esri at the moment in terms of generating it from existing data sources. Another and very different type of 3D data, which is increasing in popularity, is a 3D photo mesh. At the moment, our 3D data framework consists of a blend of all these types. I'll now hand over to Laura, who will describe our business processes in more detail and give an outline of what we're planning to do next.
Thanks, Mick. So, just before I demonstrate our actual application, I think it's worth understanding a little bit more about the planning process. If we have a major development being proposed within Nottingham, our planners expect a 3D model to be supplied to support the conversations. They don't get any resistance to this, as presumably they're building a BIM model anyway. The developers supply their BIM model to us and hopefully follow our guidance, although sometimes they supply every last tap and door handle. This BIM model is then dropped into our 3D city model, and within this assessment tool that we've created, our planners are able to undertake a site assessment, looking at the proposal's individual merits and then understanding how it fits within the wider picture. So, welcome to our internal assessment tool. I'll give you a bit of a tour. So I'll start with our base model. What you see in front of you is our LOD3 really detailed model, which covers about 5 square kilometres of our city centre, and it's where the majority of our major developments take place. Further out, we've been experimenting with Esri's 3D base map tool to create a LOD2 data to provide a bit of visual context. As you can see, the model is fast and responsive within the application. Our application is built within a 3D web scene viewer, and it's delivered via AGLE. It includes some standard controls and functionality, but it also includes some custom tools to support our desired workflow, like this dropping to street level now. As you can, So, a developer is able to select, our planners are able to select a development model and zoom into that particular location. Once the BIM model is loaded in, the site is cleared and the BIM model is put in its place. As part of our data management process of loading these in, we actually attach some basic information to the model, like its site name, whether it's resi, retail or office, and its status, so whether it's permissioned on-site or built. We also routinely add a web link to our planning portal so that you can go to the public planning documents associated with that particular development. So the next function I want to show you is our bookmark function. So this allows easy navigation by the planner and is used to establish street-level views or strategic views of a proposal in question. The planners love these pre-canned views because it makes it really easy to navigate the 3D scene. This is really important when they're delivering something like a planning committee, or like today, where it feels quite a pressured environment to navigate around a 3D scene, and you certainly don't want to end up underground or behind a tree. So the planner is also able to add really quickly some contextual data to undertake a constraints check. These can be either 2D or 3D overlays, making best use of our GIS spatial data holdings. We think this is one of the great advantages of building the assessment tool within a GIS environment. So on screen, we've included some examples. We have conservation areas coming from our enterprise geodatabase, accessibility analysis conducted in Pro and then hosted in Eagle. We have traffic flows coming from Esri's Living Atlas, and we've also included CCTV images coming live from our traffic control centre. So data can just be added from different sources, represented in different ways, to enrich the model and aid at planners' understanding. On the screen coming up is another example of contextual data, but this time we've actually injected the information and the intelligence into the base model from our 2D data holdings, symbolising the actual buildings themselves. So the example on screen is our listed buildings. This is exactly why we chose to segment our 3D model by OS building footprints, because it gave us that opportunity to add building intelligence to the actual model. So on screen now is an example of some of the actual tools that we've enabled for our planners. I think, has it stopped? I can't, because I can't find a mouse. So hang on. So we've put a number of different analytical tools within this. So things like our shadow analysis tool, measuring, line of sight, the ability to export to JPEG. These are really useful critical tools for the planner. An example, as well as using it in this tool, recently we've had smaller applications where planners have wanted to look at shadow analysis when we've had a complaint about a planning proposal and a right to light complaint. So I think as 3D progresses, we will be finding ourselves doing more and more of this, not just in the major developments in the city, but wider. So recently, we've also integrated a 3D photo mesh from Blue Sky. We really like the concept of a photo mesh to add a realism to the model. I think this particularly helps people that aren't used to accessing models, so in our planning committees and perhaps in our engagement activities that will take place. It really sort of brings it to life and actually makes you understand where you are within our city. The last thing that the demonstration will show you is also our development timeline. So not only can they undertake an individual site assessment, but they're also able to see how that site looks in context to all the other applications going on in the city. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of activity going on in our city centre in terms of developments, and each of those developments has information behind them. They can see what is going on, and they are symbolised by whether things are on-site, completed, or only permissioned. So that concludes the tour. Sorry it was a bit stop-start. On screen for you now, I've shared some comments from our planners and urban designers. They're all really enthusiastic about this tool, and essentially 3D modelling is now an embedded and fundamental part of our major development proposal assessment process. Urban designers outlined how the model enables them to negotiate scheme improvements so that they are more acceptable, and ultimately they'll be granted planning permission. So essentially, everyone seems to agree that 3D has improved the speed of decision-making on major development schemes, which in turn has reaped huge financial benefits for investors and developers in the city. And it's probably why they're engaging in the process as much as they are. So, where next? We don't want to stop where we are now. There's a lot more to explore. Because of all the good work we've been doing, we've managed to secure funding via DLUC for a 20-month project in Nottingham. We'll be partnering with Bradford around the use of 3D in the planning process, with particular focus this time on citizen engagement. Our project majors on delivering 3D using Esri technology, and the reason we're doing this is because 60% of local planning authorities already are Esri customers and users, and it makes sense for us to work in this space. We hope to produce a blueprint that would enable other local authorities to establish a similar capability to ours. So some of the details of what we're planning to do. We'd really like to work on some of the fundamentals of our 3D offer. We want to improve the 3D core data that we have available to us. So we're investigating the generation of a good quality LOD2 model so that we can achieve complete authority coverage. We're working with Esri to enhance the outputs from their 3D base map tool, using data available to the public sector. We're also planning to integrate a higher resolution, wider coverage photo mesh model. We're really keen to understand the value of the different 3D data products out there, as ultimately we'd really like to push for the inclusion of 3D products within future national mapping agreements for the public sector. In terms of the core offer as well, we want to improve the workflow and administration processes around the assessment tool. In relation to this, we're working with Esri to look at their ArcGIS urban product to see if it can provide improvements in this area, and also to see whether the tool can be adapted to suit the needs of the UK. But the programme's about citizen engagement, so our big push within this project is to open up our 3D model to the public to support planning engagement activities through a range of immersive channels. We're intending to print our 3D model, our digital model, into a physical form, as Mick alluded to earlier. We'll be then using an innovative technique where spatial data is projected onto this physical model to bring the model to life. From our own experience of seeing prototypes of this, we know that it starts really animated conversations, and we're keen to see how this works with public engagement in our city. Secondly, we'll be developing an online engagement app to provide public access to the information on developments happening across our city. We want to create a shareable template for any other customers to want to use if they want to. We've actually created a proof of concept app using Experience Builder, which is on screen now, and our chief planner has actually taken this to UK Reef today, which is a UK property event for developers and investors. And lastly, we'll be dipping our toes into the world of AR or VR for a fully immersive experience. I can't give you any more details about this right now because, to be honest, we don't really know which way that's going to take us, and it'll be hugely impacted on what we find out during this year and how much technology changes during that time. If I pass back to you, Mick.
So, whilst we've spent our time today showcasing how we've utilised 3D within the planning environment, we recognise that there are still many areas and application areas where 3D would enhance our understanding. Including on the screen are some application areas where we as an organisation or us as a team have already received interest from the organisation. I think there is a big step, I think we saw it this morning at the plenary, there's a big step change happening with GIS, and moving 2D into the 3D environment is becoming a norm. Demand to see and analyse our towns and cities in a 3D environment is increasing. And I think GIS does offer the perfect platform on which to build a smart twin city environment. After all, as GIS professionals, we've already been doing this for many decades. Just want to thank you now for listening today. As you probably guessed, we've become a little bit obsessed with all things 3D, both Laura and myself and the team. And we're very keen to chat with anybody that is currently working in this space or has aspirations to do so. Thank you very much.